Welcome back, guys, to another story time. And today, I actually want to talk to you about being in a very strict and traditional Baptist church, because that was a very interesting time in my life. So, hope you enjoy the story time. I want to have not like a disclaimer, but currently I am 27 years of age, and this all happened when I was, a child, and also in part of my young adult life at the time. I think, um, I stopped going to church when I was about 21. I want to say 20 or 21. So I've been out for quite some time, and my views now have changed drastically. And I actually no longer believe in any type of God or entity or anything like that. I'm not saying there 100% isn't a God, but the way I view it is, if there is a God, he is definitely not the God that I learned about, and I didn't change my mindset just because of the church that I went to was very quote-unquote brainwashing and cult-like. Every person I've talked to about how the environment was, they all say that it was very cult-like and that, oh my gosh, you're brainwashed. They would tell me that all the time, and I'm like, nuh-uh, but I guess this is how that works. But yeah, so just a little disclaimer is that I no longer believe in those things. Like I said, I'm not 100%, I don't like putting labels on myself, so I'm not gonna say, oh, well, I'm atheist or I'm agnostic. I don't know, I don't know what's out there, it's just what I believe now is there might not be anything, and there probably isn't. I'm more leaning towards the case that there isn't anything more than that there is. But if there is some sort of god or entity or gods, however, I'm sure it's not the one that I learned about and how it was portrayed. But overall, that's just kind of where I stand now. But I will say, like Rick and Morty style, kind of, I love the concept of like portals and other dimensions. Not like that cartoonish, but in a real concept. I think it's really cool. But anyway, just wanted to state that before I continued. That's kind of where my views are now. So, skipping ahead of my life, when I was a freshman in high school, that is when my mom decided that we needed to, and when I say we, my brother and I just have one brother, he's younger than me, and my mom decided that we need to start getting back into church, because God spoke to her, which I never understood that concept of God speaking to people. I never really understood that. And also the church that I'm about to talk about, they believed that only God could only speak to the males, especially if you were a preacher or something like that. Yeah, so it was kind of like, oh yeah, God spoke to me, and it's just like, alright, that's cool, God never talked to me before, but okay. Is God, like, calling you on your phone? Does the caller ID say God, and you pick up and you're like, hello, and God's like, you need to take your family to church right now. Like, I wonder what that conversation looked like, with her and God. I understand that God, I know God doesn't verbally talk to you. It's more of like, I guess, a feeling, I suppose, but God never talked to me, so, but apparently he's not allowed to talk to, women. So, and like I said, the church I went to, probably wasn't all according to the Bible, I suppose, but it was way more on the strict side, but yeah. So, anywho's, God talked to my mom, and she told us that, or God told my mom that we need to start going into church. So we started looking around or whatever, at a good church and everything, and my mom's like, let's try this one, because my granny and my papa and my uncle were already going to this Baptist church, and my granny loved it. So I'm just like, okay, cool, right? So we went there, and it's the funniest thing, like, thinking It's the funniest thing ever thinking back to it. So the day that we were there, and this is a small church, keep in mind you, everyone knows your name. Everyone knows your pet goldfish's name. Everyone's, up in your business. Everyone knows, your life story. That's how small this church was. So after the evening church service that they also had this kind of baby shower / gender reveal kind of party that the church was involved in for this lady and her husband, because they were, pregnant. And so, and the preacher invited us. He was like, oh, hey, just come on, you're new and whatever, because my mom didn't want to intrude or whatever. So we ended up going to that, right? And it turned out to be a girl. Yay! That's so great. Well, and here's the funny part. And I don't know if this had anything to do with the decision making of my mother deciding if we were going to go into that church or not, but later my mom asked my brother and I if we wanted to continue to go to this church. And my brother and I were both like, yeah, this is awesome. Just because they had food and cupcakes and there was a little party. But I'm sure my mom would have, made us go there anyway, regardless. But I just thought it was funny how that happened. And I'm like, I was a freshman in high school and I thought I was way more mature back then. And then I'm as old as I am now. I'm like, wow, cupcakes and food persuaded me to say, yes, I love this church. So that's actually kind of funny how that started. So we started going to the church. I went there for about a total of 5 or 6 years, and it was not fun at all, And I know you're supposed to go to church. The whole point of going to church is, to fellowship with all your, brothers and sisters of Christ, as they called them. And you're supposed to learn about God and pray together. And, it's all about communion and, community and, being around similar like-minded people. Just to give you a few examples of how this church kind of operated and their quote-unquote rules and their views and beliefs for that. First of all, the women had to wear dresses and skirts. And you could not, you could if you wanted to, but it was, I guess, kind of frowned upon in the church, show your knees, nor could you show your collarbone. So that was for the women, and the men could wear whatever they wanted. Basically, they could wear whatever they wanted. Most of the men, when it came to church time, they wore, the classic suit and tie and stuff of that nature, but women were not allowed to wear pants or anything like that. And every time we would go on these things called teen activities, because I was a teenager at this time, the women would have to wear skirts. Just for a second, just in your head, could you imagine going horseback riding while wearing a ankle-length skirt, by the way, without showing your knees? Yeah, it's pretty complicated to do. So, wearing that all the time, it was super, super uncomfortable. But, you had to do it. That's just, if you didn't, they would look at you like, oh my gosh, why are you not wearing that? And that brings me to the other point, was males and females had to stay 6 feet apart from each other. And while you were courting, is what they called it, courting, you were not allowed to hold hands or kiss or anything like that while you were dating. And you had to wait until marriage to even hold their hand. And your parents had to go on every single date with you until you were married, because you were not allowed to be alone, because if you were alone, you were probably going to do the old devil's tango. That is an Alex Myers reference, if anyone knows what that is. But, also for the men and women, there were different roles in the church and outside of your life that you should play. It was more traditional, which there's nothing wrong with traditional values. Sometimes for, some people it works out. But it was the males, they had to, work, and be the, the breadwinner, the financial one to supply for their wife and their children. That was like their job. And females, they were the stay-at-home moms who, took care of the cooking, the cleaning, and the children and stuff of that nature. And at the time, my mother was a single mom, and they looked at her like, oh my god, you're a single mother and you have to work? Ugh. Like, why are you even here? That is exactly the attitude that the church had. I'm not classifying all Christians like this, but most Christians, even outside of the church that I have met, they're very hoity-toity, is what I call them. They're very holier than thou. Like, well, I don't do that, and I'm way better than you because of whatever the heck is inside their head that thinks they're better than everyone else. But yeah, so my mom, there was only one other person who was a female who was also a single mom, but the rest of the people there, they were married in a traditional household, and the woman like never worked in her life. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But to look at somebody else and be like, oh my god, you're a single mother, like, that's like so wrong to do, honestly. Adding on to that, the female teenagers that were, around my age, because we were in the teen group, they actually made fun of me and made me feel bad because I did not wear makeup. I did not do my hair, not having anything designer, not dressing good and spending hundreds of dollars on my clothes, because I wore clothes from thrift stores. But there's nothing wrong with that. Going to church, I don't think, God is going to be like, oh my god, you're not wearing this Michael Kors thingy, whatever, I don't know what brands they have, Michael Kors thing, well, you're not good enough to be my church. God is all supposed to be about love and acceptance and spreading the word of God, not caring about, what I wear or what I'm appropriate. I'm not showing my kneecaps and I'm not showing my collarbone. God forbid someone look at that. I'm following the rules. And also, two girls there had issues because I did not do my eyebrows. Normal eyebrows that normal people have, but they, kept harping on me over and over and over again to, let me pluck your eyebrows, let me pluck your eyebrows, let me pluck your eyebrows. So I eventually was like, okay, fine. I cried. That was the most excruciating thing on my face like that. That hurt really bad. I've never had my eyebrows done, and that was the first time, and it hurt. And they're like, oh my god, you look so much better like this. And I'm looking in the mirror, I'm like, this doesn't look that good. And I don't like having pencil-thin eyebrows either. That looks really weird on me, and I think they did my makeup 1 or 2 times, I think, and each time, it's so funny, but I've seen memes about this, but that Hershey's cookies and cream bar with the little chocolate, I guess the cookies part in the chocolate bar, you can see all those bumps. Yeah, I had acne like that when I was a teenager, so when they got done doing my makeup, that's literally what I looked like. Was that Hershey bar. My youth pastor actually made fun of my clothes that I were wearing. So there was an instance where he told my brother and I that somebody gave us a couple $100s to go out and buy good clothes because he said we should not be wearing, and I kid you not, trash. My youth pastor at this so-called Christian church said that the clothes I was wearing that I got from the thrift store was trash. That hurt really badly. And so guess what we did one Saturday morning? We went to expensive places to buy my clothes. We went. It was me, my brother, and another female with the teen group, and then our youth pastor. We went to places, that were really, really expensive, and I tried on stuff, and I got judged because I liked something, and they're like, that looks so childish on you, she would say. And I'm like, okay, well, I like it. And she's like, you really need to find something more grown up. So out of the couple $100s that some random person from the church gave us, because I felt so bad for us because we were wearing trash clothes from the thrift store, I only could purchase 2 dresses. That's it. 2 dresses. And then the next day, Sunday, because we went shopping Saturday, Sunday, we go to church. I'm wearing the brand new expensive dress that we just got. And I kid you not, it's like the church beforehand huddled up and was like, okay, they finally are going to be wearing nice clothes because God definitely cares about that. And then we need to hype them up, because when I came in on Sunday, everyone was like, oh my God, Chloe, you look so good. That looks so much better. Oh my God, that looks so adult on you. Oh my God, all this and this and this. And I'm just like, thanks. And I am so uncomfortable because not only was it super expensive, that's not my style. That's not what I wear. I always wore just the same, like, either long denim skirt with a, t-shirt, or I wore the same, like, I had 4 dresses. They were just a solid color. It was like a t-shirt dress, so it covered my collarbone, thank God. And then it was below my knee. It was, like, to my calf. So that's what I wore most of the time. And it made me comfortable. And I wore little shoes, too. So that's what I wore. But I still got made fun of, but whatever, But now I was hip in the cool club, wearing this really expensive, dress that I honestly only wore a couple times, and I never wore it again. I hated it. I didn't like it at all. And people noticed that. They're like, hey, where's that dress? And I'm like, I just not really comfortable. You know what I mean? And then my youth pastor had the audacity to tell me that people spent their good hard-earned money on it, and so I had to wear it a little bit more often, so I wore it as quote-unquote often as I could, but I was very uncomfortable. On top of all the amazing things that I had to put up with that church, which I'm barely scraping that icing on that cake, by the way, but another thing was I did not just go to church on Sundays. I know the classic is, some people go to church like, once a week. Well, we went to church Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Oh, and also on Saturdays. Oh, and also during the week to go soul winning. And also to do everything else that could possibly be done with the church. To be very literal and not to exaggerate, I was there almost every single day of the week. Whether if I had school, whether if I didn't have school. That was my life. I lived and breathed that church and the beliefs, So had my nose stuck in my Bible, praying all the time for hours, reading my Bible for hours. I finished reading the Bible, once. I would never do that again. Gosh, that took me years, but, I did it. And so my brother and I were always there. And, we were the first ones to show up and the last ones to leave. And the people in the teen group, we were all supposed to help out because, we didn't have jobs, and, even when we went to school, which, another thing that I just reminded myself of, you were looked down upon if you went to public school. Me and my brother and I, and another family, they also went to public school. You were either supposed to go to a Christian school, or you were supposed to be homeschooled. If you went to public school, you were looked down upon. It was like, ugh, public school kids. Have you seen homeschool children? Not to diss anyone who was homeschooled, but there's a whole joke about it, They're very awkward or antisocial because they're not getting that socialization, and the people that were homeschooled, they were very, awkward and recluse, I think the word is. They didn't know how to interact or hold a conversation because they didn't get that interaction because they were so sheltered. I was sheltered, but golly, they were more sheltered, I will say. So, my situation was not the worst, definitely. So with that being said, we went to public school, but we always showed up. Again, first one to show up and last one to leave. Always doing things, whether it be, doing vacation Bible school, if you're familiar with that. And we would go soul winning as well, where you go knock on door to door for hours and tell people, hey, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your savior, you're going to hell. And also at the time when I was going to school, I had to wear skirts and dresses as well. And I got made fun of a little bit. I didn't care at the time. I had a good time when I was in high school. I had a really, really good time. But, there were comments here and there. Why are you wearing that? And I would always get confused with a Pentecostal, which I'm actually not sure what Pentecostals believe in, but I would always get poked at for wearing skirts, and I would carry my Bible around and talk to people about Jesus. I am so surprised I was not bullied more, I'm not gonna lie. But I think a great big deal of it had to do with that I let people copy my homework and stuff, and also I was friendly. I was really friendly, kind of like how I am now. I have a very bubbly, energetic personality, so I guess that kind of shined through. So, my religion that was all my personality, I had hobbies and stuff, like reading my Bible and praying to God. Or we also had these events that the teen group would have to help out with that we would need to raise money throughout the year, because every year we would go to unnamed state to go to a conference every year to listen to another very strict Baptist church preach. That was our reward every year, to travel really, really far to another state to listen to yet another Baptist church preacher and interact with other people who are similar to us. So, woo, we had to work our butts off all year long by doing all these food banquets, and we had to, there was different themes. Like, it was always like a food kind of thing, and we also did car washes as well. So, which I appreciate the learning aspect of it. So, your parents basically gave the youth pastor all of the money that he needed to take us to that state to do that. But we had to work for it. Like, we busted our butts all year long and did all these different things to kind of like work for our money. So our parents were not just giving our youth pastor the money so we could go, So I do appreciate the learning aspect of that. Like, not everything comes free and stuff like that. So that was the 1 out of 5 good things about that church. So we did that. So for example, we had these kind of like food events where the whole place would be decked out with, decorations. There would be chairs, tables set up. There would be food, like Chinese food. There would be themes, and we would have to dress up and, be all fancy waiters and waitresses and stuff like that and serve food. And there would be entertainment from our youth pastor and stuff like that. That was fun. I'm not gonna lie. During it, it was kind of fun. But when it came to the end of it, like, I was the last one there to be, for example, like, cleaning up, because, they had gender roles, at that church, like, men took out the trash, women washed the dishes, the guys put the put the chairs and tables up and stuff like that, which is fine. I mean, whatever, you do you, I guess, whatever works for you. But I'm, upstairs washing all of these dishes that, all the, like 50 people were there, right? And I'm the only one there doing all this, and I finally got done, and it's like, 11:30 at night, and no one has helped me, and I go downstairs, and there's, our youth pastor cutting up with the whole teen group, and there I was upstairs. So, but it was always like, Chloe will do it. It's the same mindset that they had, like, you do something once for somebody, they're like, they're a pushover. I can just tell them to do something. But, as a Christian, you're not supposed to speak up. You're not supposed to tell people that what they did hurt your feelings or whatever. You're serving God, and that was the mentality that I had, the brainwashing that I had. It was, well, you're serving God, like, that's your job. That's what you're supposed to do. How the church was teaching me and how my mom was teaching me, and my mom has directly told me this, literally, like, word for word, I'm about to say, you have to suffer and sacrifice so other people can be happy. So the way that my mind worked was, this is what I was made for. This is why God created me. I'm supposed to suffer and sacrifice and not do stuff that I want to do, and go way above and beyond out of my way to treat others the way that I should treat them, not that they treat me, and be happy that I am serving God. So I had a smile on my face upstairs all by myself, thinking that I am serving God and doing everything that I'm supposed to do, and washing all these dishes and cleaning up and doing everything by myself, and going downstairs, and I have to take a nice deep breath and go, wow, look at my youth pastor and the rest of the teen group. Look at what I did so that they could do absolutely nothing, and they could relax and chill and hang out and talk while I was up there for hours. And I had that mentality for years. Even when I wasn't in the church, outside of the church, like I said, I mean, your environment can really change of how you are, but people benefited a lot from me doing that. I would see someone who wasn't struggling at all, and I would just do it because that's what I was supposed to do. My youth pastor we would be out and about, going soul winning or whatever, and he would be like, open that door, put all this stuff in like their van or whatever. We see someone struggling on the side of the street or something like that. Like, that's what I did. And that's why in high school, I just let people copy off of my paper all the time. That's just how my mindset was at the time. And I'm like, I am benefiting from this. Like, this is what God wants me to do. These hooligans didn't take the time to do their homework. And right now I'm like, homework, small work, you know what I mean? Like, high school, no big deal, no big deal that I let them copy off my paper. But at the time it was a big deal. So the more time that went by, I was like, this doesn't really feel right that I'm just letting people copy off my paper. So by the time I was a senior, I was like, I don't really, hello, my high school friend that keeps asking for my homework every single day. I really don't feel comfortable letting you have this. I worked on this. I stood up for myself. Heck yeah, go little Chloe. I stood up for myself. I was like, hey, I really don't want to give you my homework because I went home and I worked on this. Totally valid, right? Totally valid, right? I told him, I'll help you, right? I will help you, but I just don't feel comfortable letting you copy off my paper. So we're sitting there, and the teacher at the time, he was like, Chloe, come here. And he had a one-on-one conversation with me. And I wish I was making this up. He goes, I'm noticing that, you're not letting people, you're not helping people with their homework anymore. And I was like, oh no, I was just telling unnamed high school friend that, I just didn't feel comfortable him just copying off my homework, but I would be more than happy to, help him. And I kid you not, this teacher, okay, showed me a verse. And I forgot what verse it was, but showed me a verse that says, like, help unto others or something that need help or something like that. And I stood there and I was baffled. Mr. Teacher, sir, you are showing me a Bible verse that talks about helping people who need help when I won't let someone copy my homework? Are you kidding me? But I didn't say anything. At all. I was baffled, but I was like, okay, whatever, I guess. Here, unnamed friend, have my homework. And then, I kid you not, everyone would just pass it around, the whole class. Everyone would copy it. Because that class that we had, funny enough, we all had the same calculus teacher. So, no one would do that homework but me, and everyone would copy it. But, yeah, there's that. Being in that church really shaped my personality, my mentality, the way I view things, the way, I react to things. So that was my life for years, for a long time. And it took me forever after I got out of the church to remold myself and be who I wanted to be and, not just let people walk all over me and use me, you know what I mean? But because I'm just like, that's not right. Even if you want to serve God and be a Christian, that's not the whole point of being a Christian. The whole point of being a Christian is loving God, serving God, doing what you're quote-unquote supposed to do according to the Bible, and teaching other people about God. Being nice, forgiving, and loving. Not letting people walk all over you. There are boundaries, there are lines, but that's not how I was raised, and that's not what the church taught me. And that brings me into the other thing, is how we got out of the church. So it's the funniest thing ever. So my mother and I, we were always in charge of taking care of the infants and the toddlers when, towards the end, we were in charge of taking care of the toddlers and the babies so the mothers could enjoy church time, right? So, but it was a shift thing originally that we had to do. We would all take shifts. We had our name on this stupid board and everything, saying, oh, it's your turn, Karen, to look after the babies, and now it's your turn, whatever. But where it got too extreme was somebody was sick and didn't come to church. So my mom and I had to do it. And that's all we did for weeks. We already showed them that you can just ask Chloe and her mom to do anything, so they pushed that on us as well. So for weeks, we were barely in the service at all to actually enjoy it. I mean, there was a tiny, TV in the room to look at what he was doing, and 4 pixels, So it's like, you don't really get the whole experience, and that's how my mom felt at the time. It's like, all we're doing is watching these babies. Like, this is basically our job. We're doing this for free. And I understand the whole, we're helping out the church and, putting, our effort in and doing what we're quote unquote supposed to do, but no one ever stepped up ever again after that to help us. And so my mom got really sick and tired of it, and one day we just stopped going, and we never went back. And, as an adult now looking back, I don't know if that was the only reason. I'm pretty sure it just kind of adds up. I mean, hey, you're being, judged because you're a single mom and you're trying to raise your 2 kids, and stuff like that, Just a tidbit, I don't have the greatest relationship with my mother now. We don't even talk anymore, to be completely honest. That stuff's dead and buried, honestly. But we haven't talked in forever. But I will say, for a single mom trying to take care of her 2 children, and it sucks to see that. It really does. It sucks to, try your best and then have someone, judge you for doing that and make you feel bad. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was more than just us having to constantly take care of the children and stuff like that. But that's what my mom told me when I was younger anyway, when, we stopped going to church, and then we just never went back. And that started my whole entire journey when I was 21. And it started my journey of rebuilding myself, remolding, reshaping, figure out what I want to do with my life, what I wanted to believe, what was best for me, at the time. And, I've been doing that. And the point that I am at my life right now is actually fantastic. And I love the person that I have become today. So, I would not change anything. In conclusion, that's just a little bit of just scraping the icing of the cake that is called my life. So that was a little bit of how I was raised and how the church was. And now the position I am in my life and how I am, I love it. I love my mental health. I love the way that I've worked on myself. I love where I currently am at. And it was hard and painstaking. I'm not gonna lie. It was a whole process. I'll probably get that more in detail about other millions and billions of stories that I have regarding my life. But for now, this was my story time, and I cannot wait to see what I will provide to you next time.